My name is Aimée Llewellyn-Zaidi, and I'm the Head of Health and Research here at the Kennel Club. And a lot of the things that we talk about with dog breeders are the things that we're going to be talking about with you today. So today I'm going to be talking to you about the concept of inheritance, and it may actually be a word that you've come across before, or it may be entirely new to you. But in today's presentation, you'll have 3 different learning points around the concept of inheritance. So you should understand a little bit about what inheritance is and what it means, and also some of the ways that we can use our understanding of inheritance to help make good decisions and to help improve health and welfare. When we think about inheritance, what we really mean by that is simply people who are related to each other tend to look like each other. And relations look like each other because we share some of the same genes which we have inherited from our common ancestors. The genes that we inherit are part of something called DNA, and genes are the codes for the way that our bodies build themselves and how our bodies work day to day. Most of the genes that we inherit are actually perfectly normal, and they would work as we would expect them to. But sometimes the genes aren't copied quite correctly when we inherit them, and this is called mutation. But because we inherit half of our genes from our mother and half of our genes from our father, we are very likely to have inherited at least one copy that is correct. And in most cases, having at least one correct copy is perfectly fine. It's good enough for our bodies to be able to function normally. Occasionally, though, some of us might inherit 2 copies of a mutated version of a gene, which can put us at risk of developing an inherited disease. When it comes to animals that we farm, or companion animals such as cats and dogs, we can use our understanding of inheritance to prevent some inherited diseases from happening in the first place through something called selective breeding. So the difference primarily between how we as people deal with inherited diseases is that it's more about the treatment and the management, where with farming animals or with our companion animals, we can think about it in terms of prevention. So it's the difference between treatment for people and prevention for animals. Positive side, promote the characteristics farmers and dog breeders and cat breeders have been doing for years. They've been focusing on promoting those positive characteristics. And one good example of these kind of positive attributes is to think about the vast variety of different kinds of dog breeds. And at some point, all of these dogs started out from a common ancestor, such as a wolf or the wild dogs that we think about. So to go from having a wolf all the way through to, a Chihuahua, tiny little Chihuahua, or a big Great Dane, that's required a lot of careful selection and a lot of breeding decisions made by people impacting these dogs. And it's through their understanding of inheritance that this is possible. The reason why we've selectively bred a lot of these dogs is that a lot of them had different jobs and different purposes that we liked. It could be what we think of as a proper job, like helping us with hunting or sled dogs, or it could be sort of a funny job where they're our companions and keep us company and maybe motivate us to have a little bit of exercise or take a walk. Eventually, after these many generations of breeding, you end up with distinctive types or distinctive breeds, and each of them have their own distinctive style or group of characteristics. In genetics, we think about these as being traits. This is great news if you want to have a dog of a certain size or a certain color or a certain personality, but with biology you have to take the good with the bad. Your favorite dog will not only have genes for lots of great attributes, but it'll also have a few of the riskier genes as well. In some cases, scientists have identified the specific genes that, when missing or mutated, cause a particular condition. This is really important for people who are trying to avoid having inherited diseases either in livestock or in our companion animals. A really good example of this is something called glaucoma. In the case of glaucoma, geneticists were able to look at dogs that suffered from this eye disease, and it's a pretty nasty disease. It can be very painful, and eventually it can lead to blindness. But they were looking at these dogs that suffered from the disease, and they could compare their genes to dogs that didn't have the disease. And when they found that difference, that's when they identified the mutation. By identifying that mutation and linking it with that disease, they are able to develop a DNA test. And DNA tests are great news, not just for dogs, but for people too. Using a simple mouse swab, which is a bit like a toothbrush, you can actually assess whether your dog is at risk for having that disease or is clear from having that disease. And that helps dog breeders make choices in which dogs they pair to combine and reduce the risk of inherited disease in puppies. You have to be thoughtful about how you balance the disease risk with the positive characteristics as well. It's also important to remember that not all health problems in dogs or people are inherited diseases, but by understanding how inheritance works, we can all benefit from either identifying those risks better or preventing the risks in the first place. I hope that what you've been able to learn today is that people and animals inherit genes from their parents and their common ancestors. Some of these genes can lead to inherited diseases, and by understanding how inheritance works, you can reduce the risk for some inherited diseases.